welcome back to the Support the Spectrum channel. Today we're going to be talking about the 8th video that I ever made online, which is a video specifically about the sensory stimulation items that were in the autism support classroom I was working in at the time. We talked a bit about sensory processing a few videos ago. Please watch that if you're interested, and how specifically neurodivergent people process sensory experiences, how that could be different from neurotypical people. And in this video, I wanted to highlight what type of items can benefit a neurodivergent learning experience and why that is. So first, we'll review the obvious sensory experiences, right? We have tactile experiences, we have auditory experiences, visual, olfactory is smell, and gustatory is taste. And then there are some less obvious senses that we have as human beings. What? Do we have more than our 5 senses? Yes, you do. It's not talked about as much as the first 5, but you also have an interoceptive sense, a proprioceptive sense, and a vestibular sense. So let's talk about what those things mean. Vestibular sense is a sense of your orientation in the world and your balance. It's actually deep within your ear is how we perceive our vestibular sense. And when you are having a issue with the inner ear and those crystals in there, you might have a sense of vertigo. Just to give you an example of how that vestibular system works. If you've ever experienced vertigo, you know it feels like you're on a spinning theme park ride. Something in my local town was called the Gravitron, and I've had vertigo once, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm on the Gravitron right now. And it really feels like the world is spinning so much faster than it normally is. It's crazy to think about how those little crystals in your ear have so much to do with your perception of where you are on the planet and the feeling of gravity. So yes, it helps you move, it helps you detect movement, it helps you with gravity, and it helps you also with the changes in your body position and head position specifically. So when we're talking about vestibular stimulation, we're talking about big body movements like swinging or spinning. Jumping can also be another way that you stimulate this vestibular system. Then we have proprioception or proprioceptive sense, also known as the body awareness sense. It involves detecting the position, movement, and force of your muscles and joints. And this really helps with coordination and motor planning. So things like deep pressure stimulation or even pulling and pushing can be examples of stimulating that proprioceptive sense. And then we have interoceptive sense. This is your body's ability to tell what's going on internally. Are you hungry? Are you thirsty? Are you tired? Do you have to go to the bathroom? Stuff like that. So this can be disordered in neurodivergent people and neurotypical people as well, but we see it very commonly disordered in neurodivergent people where they're unable to sense that they are in a certain state and require assistance to know when to go to the bathroom, when to eat, when to sleep, etc. So why is it important to incorporate sensory activation items in the learning environment or even the home environment as well? Well, for neurodivergent people, it can play a lot of important roles. Recent studies have found that there is a high prevalence of apraxia and dyspraxia in neurodivergent populations. Apraxia and dyspraxia are motor planning disorders. So the inability to coordinate what you want to do in your brain and what your body actually does. One way this affects treatment and learning is that a lot of people who experience apraxia or dyspraxia have difficulty sitting down and doing structured things because they need to have their body to be moving and practicing those big motor movements at times. So something as simple as bouncing on a ball can really help with their regulation and making sure that they are in this mental space to be taking in information. There's also a high prevalence of alexithymia in neurodivergent populations, and this is difficulty identifying emotions. So those who struggle with this can struggle with that interoceptive sense and not being able to tell when they need certain cues, when they need hunger cues or bathroom cues. So we can address this using sensory regulation supports. Another thing that I saw a lot in the school was a need for oral stimulation and tactile stimulation. So in that video, there were chewies, and these were so available in the school. They were all over the place because it was really important for a lot of autistic students specifically to get that input, that sensory input of chewing in order to regulate themselves and pay attention and be able to get something out of the lesson. A lot of neurodivergent people are hypersensitive to food and textures. So having this type of oral stimulation can also introduce them to a new taste experience. That could be especially helpful if you're in feeding and swallowing therapy sessions. So incorporating sensory stimulation items is really important for the development of neurodivergent people. Whether that's in the classroom or at home, it's nice to be thoughtful about what type of sensory experiences does my learner enjoy and what type of items can I have around them so that they can take in that input and feel regulated by it. Some people really enjoy twinkling lights or fidget jewelry. Some people again love that rocking sensation or jumping sensation. And there's plenty of more discrete, smaller items to have or big vestibular proprioceptive items that help people who are neurodivergent feel regulated. If you're looking for specific items to buy, please check out my link tree. I have a Google Doc there titled Gifts to Buy Neurodivergent People, and there I have it organized by what type of sense they enjoy stimulating, and there's a whole list of items that you can purchase. Most of the items are from small businesses, which is just a priority of mine, but I'm sure if you're being price conscious, you can find them on Amazon as well. I was as price conscious as possible when picking out these things, but of course certain items are rather expensive, like big swings or big trampolines. Yeah, we have deep pressure items like body socks or weighted vests. We have wobble chairs, spinning chairs. Also, things like megaphones or an echoing microphone can be really nice for certain learners. We also have sensory-friendly clothing as well. And as much as possible, I put people who are neurodivergent creators and artists on this Google Doc. So if you're interested in buying things for your loved one, check out this place first. Access to the Google Doc is free, by the way. It's definitely something to be mindful of in your learner's journey. If the difference between them being attentive and regulated and focused is a textured seat cushion versus not, of course, that could be an easy change to creating a better learning environment for your loved one. Now, I will say most of the items in my original video are curated for that younger population since I was working in an elementary school at that time. But on the Google Doc, there are plenty of options for adult neurodivergent people who require sensory stimulation and sensory regulation items as well. But there's also no judgment in an adult wanting the visual fish tank with the bubbles and the lights. That to me is not an aged item. I would enjoy having that in my house as well. So yeah, there's no shame in wanting some things that maybe are titled for kids, but is anything really solely for kids? I mean, we have Disney adults, right? Things like that exist, which I wouldn't say I'm like a true Disney adult, but love me some Disney movies. Would rather watch that than some adult movies sometimes. So that being said, I have detailed out what are some examples of supports for each stage of learning. I'm just going to go through that quickly now. So for early childhood, preschool to early and elementary, using movement-based activities like hopping to different stimulus cards or images can be a good way at activating the vestibular and proprioceptive senses and also getting them involved in learning. Some fidget toys, providing those or textured materials to help regulate sensory seeking people, and using hands-on activities like shaving cream for writing letters and stuff. Interoception with teaching emotion words with visuals. It is so important to model feeling words, especially as soon as you can at that young age, since we never stop feeling our big emotions. And using body outlines and identifying body parts early on. Making sure to incorporate movement breaks and brain breaks to help with focus. Having specific sensory corners or quiet areas, quiet rooms. This is really important for neurodivergent learners. There are many times when they just need no sensory stimulation at all to help them regulate. So making sure that's available to them is very important. And then also making sure that there is a multi-sensory learning environment using things like Play-Doh or sand, water bins, stuff like that, so that they are exposed to all types of sensory activation. Now we're moving into middle childhood, late elementary, middle school. And I just want to say again, I know I said this already, but things are not age exclusive. These are things that could work for any age. But I'm just saying what you generally see in the schools. So let's get into more middle school, late elementary. You can have students push against a wall or do chair push-ups before working on educational tasks. And this can help them with focus and regulation, not forcing them to do workouts, but just suggesting that, because once you do get into middle school, a lot of people lose recess time and they lose the ability to move their bodies. So giving them the chance to do little things like that, or even jumping, or even just being able to stand instead of having to sit, is the difference between being regulated for a neurodivergent person and not. So let's please provide it for them. Allowing gum or chewing tubes is sometimes necessary for our neurodivergent friends with that oral input. So something to remember. For interoception, you can use emotion thermometers. So connecting physical sensations with emotions. If you were talking about some more anxiety-inducing emotions, you would maybe discuss how that feels for the body. Maybe you get sweaty. Maybe your hands clench up. Maybe you feel lost in your brain. So trying to tie what is physically reacting in your body to those emotions, kind of taking the next step in emotion identification. Then, of course, providing things like wobble stool, standing desk, exercise bands, the headphones, quiet areas, and encouraging hands-on movement-based learning, like acting things out or making videos for projects where they get to physically move and act as characters could be really good for our learners. Then when we move to adolescence, high school, and beyond, again, these age guidelines are not set in stone, but thinking a little bit advanced, a little bit older with the adolescents, high school, and beyond, we're thinking about more self-advocacy for sensory needs. We're thinking about teaching them how to communicate what helps them focus and regulate. We might be incorporating some journaling for them to recognize how their body feels in that interoceptive sense, and maybe recognizing when in the schedule is best for them to perform those interoceptive needs, hunger, bathroom, stuff like that. And then, of course, still providing sensory breaks, maybe even incorporating stress balls. At this point, allowing for as much autonomy as possible is greatly recommended. Letting the learners choose how they engage with materials, whether they would rather read a physical book or do audiobooks, watch videos, maybe draw, write, paint, that kind of stuff. Whether they would like to be sitting or standing, they should really be able to make those choices. We're teaching coping strategies at this point, and we're also trying to reduce the amount of sensory stimulation that is unnecessary and can be triggering for people, like fluorescent lighting, things like that. For any age group or any person, we really want to provide them with the piece of predictability. So we can give them access to all these sensory stimulation items, but we also want to give them access to things like visual schedules, visual calendars, and also timers to set as much predictability as possible and reduce anxiety. We want to frequently check in with them saying, how are you feeling? And take note, be observant of anxiety markers. If you know that a telltale sign of anxiety in one of your clients or students or loved ones is them rocking back and forth or them biting their lip or cheek, then you can take a break, check in with them. There's also this technique of UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, where we open up the option for a multitude of approaches when it comes to learning. We're offering multiple ways for that person to process and engage with their learning. So this looks like them getting to choose whether they are presenting something verbally or written, or they get to learn using kinesthetic learning or visual learning, whatever is best for them. And all of these things keep us as educators being mindful about what neurodivergent people need to succeed. So I hope that was a helpful conversation for you to hear. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below, or you can send them to me directly on my website, www.support-the-spectrum.com. And as always, thank you so much for taking the time with me today and listening and learning, hopefully. If you're interested in seeing more stuff like this, please subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.